Alice, I see you again.
Good morning, Doug.
Hey, Mike.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. All right.
I don't know if you can actually see it.
Yes. I've heard of that place.
Yeah.
Alice,
I am ready, Doug. Yep,
Okay.
we're good.
I think we're good. Craig, you ready to get going?
Sure. So, welcome everybody to the last installment of the UNOLS annual meeting. Today we'll hear from all the various committees with updates. And again, the meeting's being recorded. Please keep yourself on mute unless you've got a question. Throw that into the chat and one of us will get to you. And then for council, we'll be sending around a poll to set up a working session sometime in the next couple of weeks. But you should expect to see that. And with that, Doug.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to session 8 and the last session of the 2020 annual UNOLS meeting. We appreciate all of you joining us once again. Today, we're going to have committee updates. We have all our committees to run through. Before we get started with Jeff Garrett and the safety committee, just a quick reminder about voting for the UNOLS representatives from all the institutions. The election closes on the 19th, and then we'll add up, take all our ballots, and we'll double check them, make sure they're all safe. We'll have the observers watching, and we'll have election results. But anyway, just don't forget to do that, please, in the coming days if you haven't already done it. And with that, we'll get started. First, today we have the safety committee with Jeff Garrett, who we pay so well to run that committee, but we really greatly appreciate his leadership and efforts. Jeff, please take it away.
Okay, thanks, Doug. The safety committee, we've certainly missed, or at least I've missed, the opportunity to get together in our annually in person at the last April meeting, but we've nonetheless managed to keep some progress going and being fairly active. If you could flip to the next slide. The main things we've done is we've entertained a number of waiver requests to the research vessel safety standards, particularly Appendix A in that book, which has the technical requirements for wire and that sort of thing. I'll show you those waivers, a summary of those waivers in just a second, but we've had a bunch of those come in. We processed them, gotten the committee to review them by email, and then we're able to render a decision almost always in a timely. I think we had to push some pretty quick, but we were pretty timely in getting those before the research vessel actually had to sail. The other big project, which has been ongoing, primarily on my part, and was a lot of help from Doug, was to do a complete update of the safety standards to basically come up with an 11th edition. We're now using the 10th edition of the book, which was issued in 2015, but there's been enough changes that we've made over the years that we thought it might be time to do a complete new edition and update that. And the updates are really in two kind of categories. One is just what I would call administrative, cleaning up typos, some terminology, some making sure the references are all still current. There's been some updated regulations and so forth that needed to be incorporated and things like that. Kind of the non-controversial minor editorial revisions. And then the other thing, there's a handful of policy sort of things we want to look at in terms of whether we want to streamline some things out of the manual or keep it more inclusive. Doug and I are talking to about those, and we will definitely get out to the community, particularly the research institution operators, to see if we want to make some of those changes. But it's coming along. I hope within um, the next couple of months, we'll be able to get a basically a completely updated draft out for review, first to the other committee members, safety committee members, and then to the community, the larger community to get feedback, and then hopefully to get a new edition issued. So next slide, please. This is just a quick summary of the waiver requests we've received and considered. As you can, there's, what is that, 7 of them in about the last year. These have overwhelmingly involved the use of overboard wires with a sheave diameter that's not the same as the wire diameter. And this gets pretty technical pretty fast in terms of what kind of factor of safety you have if you do use a wire with larger grooving on the sheave. It kind of tends to, the calculations tends to reduce the factor of safety, or will limit the amount of load that you can put on that wire. And I'm told by couple people that, you know, the Appendix A kind of put the technical requirements on the ran into conflict with some long time processes. But anyway, we're dealing with that. We've granted all of these waivers with, as long as the vessel agrees to take some mitigating procedures. And we're working on a fix that hopefully will reduce or eliminate the need for a lot of people to come in with waiver requests and make that a little bit cleaner. But that's I guess you could say it's a minor thing, but it's a lot of work for the committee, and it's a lot of work for the institutions to write up these waivers and send them in that can potentially severely impact the science that's being done. But we're continuing to work on that. And that's really all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions, any hands raised. I don't see any.
I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Doug.
What's that?
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, didn't you? You did mention, didn't you, that that Aaron Davis at Scripps is working on an update to the Appendix A to hopefully eliminate the need for doing his waiver requests?
Yep.
Yep. So no, other than that, no, we're working on the policy for chartering non-UNOLS vessels, trying to get that cleared up. We're working with NSF on that. We're working on a test case for some science on a non-UNOLS vessel. So hopefully we'll get that cleaned up soon. And that's, I know, an important piece of the RVSS that a lot of operators and scientists are very interested in. So, but thanks for your efforts for grinding through all that. It is a thankless job behind the scenes, but thanks for all your efforts on that and updating the RVSS. I don't see any questions or hands raised. So next we'll move on to the Maris update from Mark Brzezinski, who's going to provide that for us. Mark?
Yep. Okay. We've been keeping ourselves active despite COVID. We have a few things going on that I'll explain, and we have had first some committee membership changes. So right now the committee member is myself. I assume I'm the chair. I used to be co-chair, and that's what we'll talk about in a minute. And then Craig Lee from UW, Emily Shamahui, and Brandy Murphy from UNOLS office. We had two members rotating off, Debbie Studdard, who was the former co-chair with myself, and then Claire Rhines from OSU is a former member. So I think we'll be doing some recruiting for the committee. I'll have to coordinate with the office to figure out how we do that and determine whether or not I'm chair. I figure we just would default to that. I want to thank Debbie and Claire for their service. I think Debbie's on the call. I didn't see Claire, but Debbie's had a really big hand in the success of Maris to date, and she deserves a lot of credit. And Claire has been a great member as well. So next slide, please. So we've been keeping somewhat active. We met on the 25th for our last meeting, and we met before that as well, trying to catch up on a few things, being sensitive to however everyone's busy responding to COVID in different ways. We worked a bit more with the UNOLS office on the statement relative to inclusion and diversity. So we've worked on that statement, and we're also discussing possible avenues for enhancing UNOLS diversity efforts. That's mostly brainstorming right now. No great insights to report yet. Under gender expression, support, and safety, as you know, we have planning software in development that's almost ready for prime time, I think. And we're working in some of the issues with pronouns and preferred names into that, and thinking as we go forward with some of this about some of the legal obligations and privacy issues that have to be paid attention when we're doing this. We still have some old business that we've kind of let sit for a while. We went back and looked at the policy the ship operators have put in place, and most have them now. There's some variability in terms of how accessible they are on websites. So we'd like to be addressing that in the future, but with COVID and all the effort operators have put in with that, we haven't really moved forward on this very much. So those are sort of the things we've been working on in the present and for the future. And then the last slide is something will be coming our way. We've discussed this in the past at council, whether Maris should be a standing committee. And to facilitate consideration of that, we spent a lot of time recently developing terms of reference, and big shout out to us do this, and Brandy as well. Get that put together properly, and we spent a lot of time on the language of that. The consideration process for this is listed here, and I don't think we've begun this. Maybe Alice can chime in afterwards, but the House representatives first vote on whether we should become a standing committee, and if they do vote in the affirmative, council develops and approves these terms of reference that we have been developing. And then those go back out to the representatives to vote on and adopt, and they'll become part of the UNOLS charter. Okay, those are part of the charter, so we have to have this formal process. So those terms of reference are available, and Alice, you'll have to fill me in where they are in the process, but that's all I have.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so the transferring Maris to a standing committee is part of the 2020 UNOLS ballot, which Doug was referring to earlier. So I encourage everyone to vote. That's one of the issues on the ballot.
Clearly, I haven't seen the ballot yet.
No worries. Well, now I know. I'll send that to you too.
Yeah, that was that email snafu. So, any
Exactly.
questions? Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Looking to see if we have any questions from anybody. Appreciate your efforts in that. I also wanted to add that you mentioned about the work with the cruise planning software and making sure the right pronouns and terminology. We're doing the similar kind of work with the new marine facilities planning system, trying to make sure they align properly too. So it's an important subject that we are addressing on multiple fronts. Okay, with that, we'll keep moving along. And next up is the Fleet Improvement Committee with Jim Swift.
Good afternoon. The Fleet Improvement Committee has not been active in a meeting sense for a while, although that's partly because things are going along so well in areas of, or on hold either way, on areas of our concern. We are planning another meeting at the moment, but I envision that meeting taking advantage of the reports that are online from this meeting that are related to our interests, so that we don't have to ask people to basically re-give the same reports to the FIC that they already had provided to the annual meeting. So we'll probably have a one-day meeting focused on a few items of FIC immediate concern. Membership is stable and full right now, and we'll go to the next slide. Our areas of concern remain with watching the RV process, which we've all heard reports on now. When they move into sea trials and science verification, the FIC will get active with that in terms of looking at the overall program and what we can learn from it. The midlife refits, we'll be taking, we'll be all reading the report. The committee will be sent the report that Bruce Applegate provided, and also for the Revell, and we'll also be watching over the Atlantis. We'll probably be sending out queries to the scientists who were involved in the sea trials for any extra comments beyond what Bruce had stated so well. We were glad to see that the comms, the SATCOM thing worked out so well for the considering the COVID situation. We were sort of standing by on the marine seismic issues, and that seems to be coming along very well now, thanks to very hard work by Lamont and NSF. The polar, the Antarctic research ship issues are, we heard a report on that at this meeting, and that's coming along well. And then you'll see in other reports that are available online from this meeting that the UNOLS office has been busy supporting FIC interests. Next slide, please. I think where we're going to be taking a little bit of a look at our next meeting or telepresence issues. We need to make some progress on finding a way ahead with the coastal and local ship recapitalization. I think that that's an intriguing area of business for the FIC to address at our meeting. And also the issue, any issues that we should be involved in terms of long-term planning for small boat operations. So I would say the items on this page will be the type of items that we will be discussing at our, except for the last slide, but these will be the items that we're discussing at our next meeting. And the last slide, we still have the issue of the global class SMRs. Of course, we've just extended the service life of our global class ships. There's a fine document available that's just being touched up. We've been held in the held at this stage for a long time, partly because of the competing interests for the people who are working on this, I would say. But we will have an SMR document for the council, for UNOLS to look at during the coming year. And that's my report. Any questions?
Great, thanks, Jim. Greatly appreciate it. Scanning real quickly. I don't see any hands raised for any questions. It's pretty straightforward. You're right, there's been a lot of great reports, a lot of great progress. So I think we're benefiting from the way we're doing this, so everybody gets to see the same reports at once. Next up is the Deep Submergent Science Committee with Anna Louise Reisenbach, who's going to give us an update of that committee's activities.
Hi, thank you very much. This has been quite a wonderful series of talks. Thank you again, everybody, for organizing. So as always, I'll just give you a basic summary of desk membership, give you a little bit of update on the NDS vehicles, and then some other activities and concerns. Next slide, please. So our desk membership has been fairly stable. We just, as many of you have seen, have elected Jeff Marlowe to join the group. He is an early career professor at Boston University, assistant professor, and he'll take over Amanda Demopolis's position. Roxy is now our friend of Alvin as well, also one of our newer members. Andrew Thurber is the friend of Jason, and then we also just recently elected Dorsey Wanless to be the vice chair of desk, given that that we needed one. And then Scott White is the friend of Century. So that's sort of our makeup. We've had a very busy year, and it's been good, but it's been very busy. And so after I spoke in the summer, we had our desk meeting, which was very successful, but went over time. And so then we had to meet as a separate desk committee to discuss some issues that we then were going to develop. So that went well, but as I say, we've had a busy year. And so I'm going to give you some ideas of why we've been so busy as well in a little bit. Okay, next slide. And so just an update on the vehicles. Jason still managed to get 4 cruises done this year, even though we had COVID. The first I already mentioned at our previous meeting with Jeff Seawald, where he went to the Cayman Rise, and that was very successful. The other cruises were all pretty successful as far as I understand. Yeah, Jason did well this year, even though we had all the COVID issues. It turns out that 2020 is going to be even more ambitious for Jason, but for all the vehicles of NDSF, because they're going to do playing catch up from this year. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, and as you all know now, Alvin's overall is going well, which will result in the sub being able to be rated to 6,500 meters. They were still able to complete 3 cruises in 2020, and some of those operations were done concurrently with Century and the Wave Glider. So that was also pretty successful for this, given everything that happened this year. Next slide. And like Jason, Century's also had some good results this year. It's had a lot of good joint Alvin and Jason operations. So that, Century, now that it's upgraded and most of its stuff is stabilized, it's doing really well. It's a real workhorse for a lot of folks. I spoke to Chadwick this week, and next slide, please. He said their cruise went very, very well. They lost 5 days to weather, unfortunately, even though they were in the good weather window. But all told, all the vehicles are doing really well. And so we're very happy about that. Next slide. So some of the other activities that have really kept us very busy this year are the Abyss workshops, which I mentioned to you at our previous meeting. And the objectives of these workshops, NSF-funded workshops, were to synthesize community input in terms of what are the science priorities for the Abyss. And so we had, and then ultimately also develop a paper or a program thinking about what do we want in the science verification cruise when Alvin comes out of overhaul. And so the committee is there that helped develop these online workshops. We were planning a total of 3, held twice, so a total of 6. And right at the end, No Innovation, who was helping organize ours, actually agreed to do a 4th workshop. Next slide, please. And the workshops were very well attended. The materials are all available. They were very exciting. So first was on abyssal plains and seamounts. The next was on trenches and transforms. And then the final one that we thought was the final one was the technology and societal relevance of the abyss. And then we added a 4th because of the importance of this topic on DEI. And we have been synthesizing all the recordings and all the notes of all of these meetings. And next slide, please. And right now we have a very nice outline for a publication that we're going to be working on over the next few months. And the plan is to go into some high profile journal to really elevate or to emphasize the importance of a deep submergent science, especially in the abyss, and all the opportunities it has. And so so that's in the progress, in process at the moment. And then we're also discussing where and what the science verification cruise would look like when Alvin comes out of overhaul in the fall of next year. And again, these have been ongoing discussions mainly with NSF and the group, the NDSF group. So busy, and we're going to continue to be very busy until some of these are clarified and finished. Next slide. And then some other activities we've been involved in. We have developed a paper or just a statement about that we request to NDSF to adopt a standardized, more unified data directory structure across all vehicle platforms. And this, it really came from some of the debriefs of scientists using the vehicles. And so really we want to just have one unified data directory that the end members or the end users find intuitive and useful to use, whether they're using Sentry, Alvin, or Jason. So that we've developed. We're also in the process of thinking about instead of a new users program this year, early next year, we're thinking of doing a series of workshops on how to make good images, whether it's video or still. And we're going to launch this on the back of what NDSF has already done, which is they hired out a group to develop a curriculum for them on sort of a curriculum on imagery training and what makes a good photograph, etc. And so basically that curriculum, the objective for NDSF was to teach the basics and fundamentals of capturing video and capturing images, what makes high quality video and underwater skills. And they'll basically largely do this instruction looking at old photographs and new ones. So I've just recently seen the curriculum. It's actually fantastic. And I think we can really use a lot of those materials for our scientists. And so right now we're assembling a committee to develop the workshops. I don't quite know exactly how we're going to do the workshops. There may be a series of them. And these will be available to scientists who are interested in using the vehicles, scientists that are early users, and more and others. So and so tentatively we're planning to launch this in March of 2021. We also just recently decided on when our desk meeting, our annual showcase meeting will be, and this is going to be early in December. The actual date is still to be determined. But we also, like many of you, have decided to make this a fairly small meeting, really just to focus on the science, the great science that these vehicles have produced, and then also just a real update on NDSF facilities. And so we've managed to, the current agenda, we've been able to squeeze that into about 4 to 5 hours. So I'm very excited about that. And we will be discussing in the near future exactly when our new user meetings will be in the future. So there's been some discussion to actually sometimes have them at AGU, but sometimes have them at ASLO as well, so that they're not AGU centric. So that's in the planning. I've got another little point there in my slides about other thoughts, and I'm sure you all are aware of this already, but NDSF is having some shakedown in staffing. So Adam Soul is leaving Woods Hole. I assume you all know that. And so that's going to be a position that we really need to fill fairly soon. And many of you also know that Carl Kaiser, who originally launched Century, has also left. And so that has definitely impacted the group. In talking with some of the members, COVID has also, has had an impact on the teams in the science, given that you have to do the quarantines before and after the cruises. So it's not all sailing, but it's working. So that's what's really important. And I think that's more or less all I had to say for now.
Thanks, Anna Louise. Great to hear all that. Challenges abound, but they've done a great job this year. The vehicles getting a lot of science done despite all that's happened, and a lot of creative solutions by their teams to make it happen. So thanks for that update. I'm checking real quick to see if there's any questions for you or comments from anybody. I don't see any, so thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to John Orcutt, who's going to provide an update for the Marine Seismic Research Operations Committee. Ms. Rock. And John, you out there?
Doug, he was in the waiting room. I just admitted him right now.
I see him. Okay, thank you. Apologize for the little delay, but I think we're doing fine time-wise today. So looks like he dropped back out again.
He's not in the waiting room yet.
Yeah, I saw him checking in briefly, then he left again. Why don't we go ahead and move on to, for the time being, to the Research Vessel Operating Committee, RVOC, Zoltan Kelly. Zoltan, if you're ready to go ahead and talk.
So quick voice check.
Sound loud and clear.
All right. So the Research Vessel Operator Committee is made up of Marine superintendents of our UNOLS vessel operating institution. Our spring meeting was overcome by the coronavirus, one of the early cancellations within the UNOLS schedule. However, in conjunction with our chair-elect, Doug Baird from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and with assistance from the UNOLS office, the RVOC has concentrated on risk mitigation measures in order to return to operation and continue operations during the coronavirus pandemic. And so through nearly monthly meetings, we share lessons learned and best practices. And because of our ship sizes, the configurations, also the geographic locations of our operating institutions, we understand that no one solution, no one set of risk parameters works for all. But by sharing information, we've come to have, I believe at this point, every single operator has returned to sea in some capacity during the coronavirus. And this is a very good news story. We talk about other things that are just slightly outside, such as flu vaccinations and the reason why you would want to do that during the pandemic. And in 2021, we know that there are additional cybersecurity regulations coming up. They're underneath the International Maritime Office, but they're being enforced in the United States through the American Bureau of Shipping, as well as the U.S. Coast Guard. So we will have additional attention to cybersecurity in 2021. We will also start looking very closely at picking up international cruises as permitted by the world situation. So we walk a tightrope, and we've had some dealings with coronavirus on our ships, but by and large, we're doing science at sea, and this is a good news story. And subject to your questions, that's a report from the Research Vessel Operator Committee.
Thanks, Zoltan. I'm not seeing any hands raised. All I can do is just salute all the marine superintendents, the operators, for doing an amazing job of getting the ships back to sea again, doing science safely, working closely with science parties to creatively find ways to get the work done. It's been it's a heck of a burden on all the operating institutions to make this work. And you guys have just pulled it off splendidly. And thanks for your leadership, you and Doug, with the committee, bringing everybody together to talk about it regularly, to share ideas, lessons learned, challenges, raising good questions, things like that. All right, not seeing any questions or hearing any. Let's go back to the MSROC. John Orcutt, you ready to go?
Yeah. Can you hear me? All right.
Loud and clear, John.
Yeah. Major cockpit problem here, I guess, with all these different devices and none of them working, but it is working fine now. The report I have today is pretty short. The chair of MS ROC, and if I could have the next slide. There are a bunch of challenges, just as have been with going to, well, largely associated with going to sea. We've encountered extended quarantine requirements on our first trip to Alaska. All that got sorted out, but it did extend substantially the length of the cruise and the people that were supporting the work out there. Because of this, of course, the stretching these experiments out as we are now, the budgets available are significantly challenged. Here we just had the Ravel sailed a short time ago, but we'll be gone for some time before it gets back in to Hawaii by way of the South Pacific, another extended cruise. So we're with regard to engineers and techs that go to sea, we have to pay a lot of attention, both at Woods Hole, Scripps, and at Lamont, to keep the morale high here and get everything done during a very challenging year that's coming up. One of the major problems that we have coming up is the aging of the equipment. The last instruments were built in 2012. Most of them are most of the instruments are much older than that. one interesting thing that happened recently is we found that no one is available to sell glass balls for flotation, although we have been trying to get away from those because of problems we've had in the past with imploding glass balls and so on going into syntactic foam. But getting new instruments built is something that MS Rock and that we'll have to pay attention to in the coming year. And next slide, I believe there's one more. We have a symposium that's scheduled now. We were going to do it physically near Annapolis in the spring, but that's impossible now given the coronavirus problems that are expanding daily now. So we plan to do this virtually over several days, as places like the AGU and others have done, and we have done, in fact, with this series of UNOLS meetings. We've spread this over a few weeks, and the symposium itself will probably be extended over several days in order to make it reasonable and timing to be adequate. Yeah, and Iris is working with us to actually run that particular symposium, and I believe that's what I've got right now. A fairly short report, but plenty of challenges. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Anybody have any questions for John in the MSROC or the OPSIC that John was talking about as well? Quickly looking at my list of all the attendees. I don't see anybody raising any hands. So thanks, John, for that update. Now we're going to shift over to the Arctic Icebreaker Coordination Committee, ICEC, with Sam Laney. How you doing, Sam?
Hey, everybody. Hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Perfect. So a short oral presentation. There's either a lot of stuff going on with the EAC or basically nothing, depending on how you look at it. It continues to be a very challenging and interesting committee to be on. We get to deal with all sorts of new challenges on a basically monthly basis and watch people do really good jobs taking care of very challenging issues. So obviously our year has been very much like most of the other committees, starting off with dealing with COVID. And, with the Coast Guard ship in the mix, the Healy, there are multi-agency problems that we spent most of our first year learning about and watching the Coast Guard do an excellent job. We had one NSF cruise voluntarily postponed to next year. So that's the Anderson Hab cruise. So that is on schedule to be on Healy next year, 2021. And Healy did a phenomenal job organizing and staging for the one remaining cruise, an ONR cruise. That pretty much was the first half of our year watching both Healy and Sikuliak overcome some really interesting challenges creatively to get our scientists to sea, and we appreciate that tremendously. It was jobs well done on both accounts. After the last time I reported at our late July meeting, Healy had an engine fire in August, and just 60 nautical miles out of Seward had to turn around. The ship is out of commission. It's being repaired. We are told that we can expect it back afloat and undergoing trials in December, January timeframe. And communication I've had with the people I talked to at Coast Guard, they seem to be very confident that 2020 operations will continue as planned. So 2020 operations is the delayed Hab cruise, the Anderson cruise, but also a very interesting opportunity for U.S. scientists that Coast Guard had proposed to us earlier last year. They're going to be doing operational work in Baffin Bay, interacting with Canadian Coast Guard and Navy, and they offered United States scientists an opportunity to sail along through the Northwest Passage and also do cruises in Baffin Bay. So that's basically been our largest effort in the interim, is making sure that'll work well. Coast Guard is not an agency that's used to selecting science based on merit and organizing cruises. And so they've asked AICC to help. And we have been walking, which is kind of a delicate line, I think, between absorbing responsibilities that aren't ours and becoming decision makers that we're not, while supporting things that we can do. So for example, the UNOLS office offering the ship time scheduling resources for this, and just sort of acting as a pipeline to helping the Coast Guard execute this. And I'm happy to say that, at least in my opinion, things are going great. You can imagine that these things can go very sideways quickly, but we have one large group that seems to be well suited for the Baffin Bay cruise. So a large US contingent, like large, 12-person group. And then 3 other teams that will have smaller projects that can fit within the Baffin Bay operations, plus a Canadian scientist who wants to participate and do benthic grabs along the Canadian side. So this is working out very nicely. It's gonna, if this goes according to plan, it'll be a very unique opportunity for you as scientists to work in a region that the ship isn't normally in. And furthermore, we also have the transit. So there's a whole separate pile of scientists choosing the west to east transit through the Northwest Passage as a cruise of opportunity. So I feel that the Coast Guard people in Seattle feel that we are being helpful, and I get the impression that they feel that this new opportunity will work out well, both for their operational goals and our science contributions. So that's really nice to see. You notice I haven't spoken much about Sekuliak. Sekuliak is great. All we hear from Sekuliak users is how wonderful a ship it is to be on, how helpful and proactive the crew and the shore support is. Sekuliak continues to do a phenomenal job, and so I just want to make sure that's recognized. We have had a sort of a challenging scenario last year and this year keeping our membership afloat. We're undergoing a big turnover. We've lost Mike Lomas this year and Chris Polashensky, people you probably know. They've put in 6 years on the committee and have done an excellent job. And if you have a chance to say thank you to them in person, please do. Their contributions have been very valuable. We've brought on 2 new scientists onto our board, Emily Edium from University of North Carolina and Seth Danielson from University of Alaska Fairbanks. They're going to be great additions. As a chair, I'm personally happy because we've managed to hit some of our gender and institutional and career level goals to keep the committee diverse and broad thinking. So, you know, I'm pleased with that, but we have 2 more openings coming up next year. So you'll be hearing from me asking for more fresh meat to head our way. Other than that, you know, we've been doing just, you know, standing by and watching people do some very challenging adaptability exercises on their own. We have a meeting coming up in January. We're going to have our annual meeting as planned. There's had to been a little juggling for that because of uncertainties when Healy might be ready and when Healy crew might be available. But Doug in the office have been working with me and other people to get that scheduled for January. We do have 2 initiatives that we've been working on over this year, and they've kind of had to take a back seat. One was contributing information to Healy about potentially refitting their foremast. So Coast Guard is considering rebuilding the structure on the front end of the ship where most ships would have meteorological sensors, and the US's ships, the Sekuliak has something like this, but the Healy really doesn't. So we've been providing input so that they can stay at the leading edge of global Arctic science in terms of instrumentation and capabilities. And then the other working group that you'll hear more about at our January meeting has to do with making sure that scientists have as easy possible times doing research in these politically challenging areas. So working in northern Alaska and coastal Arctic regions, you know, even in Canada, has become much more of a complicated thing for perhaps, let's say, a junior scientist to become engaged in if she or he isn't used to working in the system. And the AICC has a role to make sure that we understand what the challenges are, and if things aren't working for those new scientists, we can help them. So we've had a working group looking into those issues as well, just asking recent scientists what it's like and maybe how is it different from 5 years ago, just to make sure we're up to speed on what's going on. and we can help out where we can. But that's the long and short of the AICC. I'm happy to field any questions if people have any. Thank you.
Great, Sam. Thanks. Great presentation. Thanks for all your great leadership in the committee, especially with all these challenges the Coast Guard's had. You've been great working with them to make it happen. I don't see any hands raised with any questions, so we'll keep rolling right along. Next up is the Scientific Committee for Oceanographic Airborne Research, or SCORE, and a little different world that most of us are used to. Luke, you could go ahead.
Thanks, Doug. Do you want to? Yeah, perfect. All right, well, thank you. So today I'll go over some of the activities that the committee has had over this past year, membership, and I'll spend some time giving you some update on the UNOLS aircraft facility located at MPS, that used to be called Surpass. We had to change the name a few years ago. And now we want to change it back actually to Surpass, and I'll go over that in a second. Before I get into this, I wanted to remind everybody what are the function of this committee. So if you go to the next slide, as it is, slightly different to what the other committee are focusing on. So this is, some of it is taken from the charter. But the idea here is that, a group or team is providing advice to the national aircraft facilities, and this is surpass, supporting federal agency on all aspects of operation, sensor development, fleet composition, utilization, and data service as appropriate, when it comes to airborne in support of oceanographic research. We provide the ocean science user community with information, advising and them in experimental planning, facility usage, scheduling, et cetera, and that's really correspond to the number of requests that we get year-round from user interested in using airborne asset in support of their research program. We've developed and reviewed flight policies, became very important with the use of unmanned aircraft. And this is, what was one of our big focus over the last, several years, developing this UNOLS US policy and the associated operator handbook to guide user and operators in how to safely operate those platforms. And obviously, another component is promoting the collaboration and cooperation between facility operator on those topics, funding agencies, scientific community to improve the availability, capabilities, and quality of the aircraft facility supporting those kind of science. This is also a technical and scientific committee. We're all scientists, and this is really important as we want to keep up to date with some of the new technology development, as well as the science that has been coming out of those kind of facility, which ultimately will support UNOLS operation. Next slide. I think you can keep going. Yeah. All right. So membership, we've had some rotation. Dave Fisichella from Woodsoul rotated off after I believe 8 years at SCORE, with very valuable input and contribution to the group. He was replaced by Ronnie Avisar from University of Miami. He has been interacting a lot with the SCORE group in the past. We're very happy to have him. He's been developing this helicopter, research helicopter at University of Miami, and his input will be greatly appreciated. Andrew Wogan from OSU is the committee rep for RV Tech. He's replacing Steve Art for University of Alaska. This is very important that we get some RV Tech, that we have RV Tech representation in our group, because there's obviously some strong ties between the two committees. When we also have Anthony Buchholz from NPLs that joined our team as the new head of NPS surpass, the aircraft facility that I mentioned earlier. Generally speaking, we try to keep a balance between unmanned and piloted aircraft research expertise, because those two are very important in our opinion to this committee and to the interaction with the UNOLS ship-based community. During the COVID pandemic, we had to cancel in-person meetings, and we initially started doing a standard remote meeting for a day and a half or a day, but we ended up changing the format to a monthly 1 to 2 hour remote Zoom video conference call, which kind of like following what Council has been doing. I think it's a good format. So we met a month ago. We're meeting at the in a week and a half again, and I think it seems to be to work pretty well. Next slide. So in terms of the activities, after completing this US operation handbook, we're not pushing to advertise this capability to the broader science community. And that's what we started to do during Ocean Science, and I'll talk about it in a second. We are in the process of updating the SCORE website to provide more specific information and improve the content. And we're also, we kind of put a pause on this because of COVID this year, but we're starting to restart developing this roadmap for making unmanned aircraft, in particular, a standard instrument, a standard capability as part of the academic research fleet. And that's where, obviously will require some strong collaboration between RVTech and SCORE to develop such thing. We're also, like everybody else, trying to look at the impact of COVID on airborne research. At this stage, we are gathering information, both in terms of, mitigation plans or any kind of experience. I mean, generally speaking, a lot of airborne-based experiments were postponed, but some of them, were able to proceed under a very strict mitigation and social distancing plan. Next slide. I mentioned that we had a town hall for a committee during the last Ocean Science meeting. It was entitled "Expanding the Reach of the Research Fleet: Autonomous and Piloted Airborne System in Support of Ocean Science." We kept the abstract fairly broad to really try to get a good understanding of what the community was interested in. We had a lot of interest. It was very well attended. We had a lot of early career scientists and students, including a grad student presenting during a lighting talk session. So we had a series of, not exactly the number, but a dozen of very short, 1 to 2 minute talk talking about various topics. And I can just put some screenshots here. We hope to continue doing this, and that's where the website is going to be very important. We're able to get about 50, I think, people leaving their email address. So we have this, we have a way to reach out to these committees that showed some interest and kind of pursue this in the future. All right, next slide. So I mentioned, I talk about the UNOLS aircraft facility. We provide some oversight for this facility. It is called surpass. It was called surpass for a long time. It was established in 1996 at NPS. And you can read here some of the detail. I've taken this from a brief that Anthony Buchholz, the new head of surpass, has given at the last core meeting last month. I want to really give you some history on this, because a few years ago there was some changes. But before I get into that, it was started in 1996. it became a national facility within UNOLS in 2002. Developed a lot in the 2000s, acquiring some equipment, unmanned aircraft. They're operating a research-grade twin otter aircraft. They had two by the mid 2015, and then in 2016, 2017, there was a major reorganization at the Naval Postgraduate School. And because of new directive and funding constraints, they decided to divest a lot of the capability of surpass. Surpass could no longer be a center, so it also required to change its name, and that's what you heard about a couple of years ago when we had to revise the surpass name in the charter. Now it became, since then it became a laboratory under the Department of Meteorology at NPS. It has a small hangar, but it's still a substantial amount of space. They kind of changed the leadership as well. Rob Sparrock on the ONR side of the funding side took over for Tim Schnorr, as you know. And in January 2020, Anthony Buchholz took the leadership. So he's a director / chief scientist. It used to be two positions at the time, but now it's just one position. And in May 2020, on the science side, at ONR, Dana Vittorio took over upon retirement of Ron Ferrick. That's another one. All right, next slide. So I mentioned the name. It's important because we need to change the charters back. In 2017, we couldn't call surpass because it is, it was not a center anymore. But since the facility has been known as surpass for so many years, and there is a lot of people recognize the quality of the work from surpass in the science community, so we wanted to keep this. And as Anthony mentioned, in many ways, people didn't even know what surpass stood for. It was just a surpass aircraft. So there I've decided to keep the name, not as an acronym, but as a moniker. And this is a new name that they're coming up with. We're still putting some final decision on what name it's going to be. But please be advised that we'll have to revise the charter again and to make sure that the appropriate name is used in the charter. Next slide. The surpass aircraft, the Twin Otter has been busy. This is actually just some pictures of kind of the facilities that they have. The right side, this is really the workhorse of this group. They have a research Twin Otters that has unique capability in terms of atmospheric measurements as well as very low level flying. They routinely fly down to 30 meters in stormy conditions. Collecting quite unique air-sea interaction measurements and atmospheric measurements. We have a nice hangar space. They were busy, somewhat busy this year, but obviously their the schedule was impacted because of COVID. So they had some canceled mission, but they were actually able, through the support of ONR, to do some last-minute mission in California to study those very hairy smoke pattern that we experienced during the fire season. So this is a picture taken on the left here on September 9. They called it the Mars flight because it was all orange everywhere, and they were able to collect quite a unique data set for radiative and macrophysical properties and effect of smoke, which they're all very excited about. Next slide. Another thing I wanted to mention is, and this is in discussion with Anthony, As some of you recall, Surpass had an MOU with NSF a few years ago. This MOU expired and was never renewed. There was some discussion a few years ago to proceed with this, but there was some uncertainty with the leadership at Surpass, and now we're in a good position to renew it. It would be great because it would really open the pool of user for this facility. So Anthony will be in touch if he's not already has been with NSF on this topic, and I'll be happy to help with this as well, along with the school group. And I think that's pretty much it. Next slide. Yep, that's it. Thank you, and you let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Luke.
Great presentation, very informative. Thanks for your leadership through a challenging year. Always doing interesting things with SCORE. Many of us know what's going on because most of us are focused around ships and stuff, but it's very important and we appreciate your efforts. Anybody have any questions for Luke? Okay.
Low question day.
It is a low question day, heavy gravity Monday, I guess. Last but not least is RV Tech with Lee Ellett from Scripps is going to provide a presentation. They have had a challenging and busy year too, so I'm sure it'll be interesting. Lee?
Yes, thank you, Doug. I just have a few slides. Next slide. So we had RV Tech, largest meeting, UNOLS meeting of the year. And so we had a challenge to move that to be a virtual meeting with the great support of Brandy, who's working on all the technical challenges with using these various tools, and Alice's support. We're able to pull together a meeting. I also thank Jules Hummon for all her support in participating in the planning meetings and giving great feedback. So we ended up with a virtual meeting, which I'll describe some of the tools later, but the topics, for security, we had an identity management presentation. This was by John Haverlack at UAF through a CI/COE engagement. That's the Cyber Infrastructure Center of Excellence, NSF funded program. What's interesting here is that they did basically a feasibility study on what it would be like to have EDU roam for ships. So you use your same institutional login to log into a ship or to log into the new UNOLS MTOL, things like that. So that was pretty good detailed on the feasibility of that. And next, again, cybersecurity, we had inventory management where ICEC and the creators of the Marine Facilities Planner prevailed on two different systems. So ICEC had some specific challenges with instrumentation and a tool that they had developed, and the MFP tools that we'll see in the future also have a very powerful inventory management. So that session had a lot of great information. With this new format of having the presentations, we did a number of question and answer sessions where there was either a deeper dive through a presentation or just questions that the community would have, and that's what community may have. And that's where we did things for SatNag and High Seas Net had a session, UHDAS, the winch pull. And we had great presentation by the Multi-Beam Advisory Committee, Rolling Deck to Repository. They give detailed presentations on their work and active topics. Then we had a series of presentations on data acquisition systems and best practices. So things like open vessel data management, Coriolis, the ocean best practices, an international effort that was very interesting. We had several presentations on sensors and instrumentation systems, and we still retained a Friday session virtually with administrative mesh networking. Next slide. Yeah, so the tools that were used, it was used Zoom, but then the majority with just the presenters, and YouTube for the general audience. Slack, which is a business text, and you can do attached files, coordination tool that was used heavily during the session, so that questions could be answered not just during the presentation, but throughout the week. And then we added some introductory slides. So the results were we had 200 registrants, 136 attendees in Slack, and 79 participants filled out the introductory slides. We had a pretty well attended Monday social event using breakout rooms, so we switched up the breakout rooms over the course of an hour with moderators and topics. So going forward after this meeting, something to keep the technical exchange of information going. We're organizing some quarterly moderated technical sessions, so that's something we're working on. And then in discussing with the UNOLS office how to retain Slack as a communication tool and coordination for RV-Tech, so that's in the works as well. So it kind of has its place, but without disrupting the normal exchange of information through email, etc. So those were some of our results and future plans. That completes my report, unless there are any questions.
Let's see. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.
You have had a busy year between bringing ships out of midlife and supporting science and running all this and getting cybersecurity off the ground and all that. So thanks for all your great leadership and hard work. RV-Tech is a great community through people like you, all the exchange of information, and everybody I know looked forward to RV-Tech and I saw it was a great success. So thanks for you and Jules and Brandy and Alice all for making that happen with the community. So well done. Any questions for Lee? Well, that concludes all our presentations we had planned. We really appreciate everybody having some great updates today from the committees. The committees are the backbone of UNOLS and what happens in our world. So thank you for all your work by you and all your members. We can't thank you enough. And in a challenging year, the committees still were very vibrant and active. So we appreciate everybody's work. One thing I wanted to do before I sign off and turn it over to Craig, I just want to make sure we say thanks for joining us for our meetings, and we welcome your feedback on how we did this. It was first time doing it, well attended, all these we think, and we've gotten good feedback, some good comments so far, but we welcome very honest and constructive feedback so we can do even better as we can continue on running all this virtually for a while. But it's been a real pleasure to talk to everybody and see everybody online. With that, Craig, oh, somebody had their hand raised or something.
Yeah, Doug, it's David.
Yeah.
Hey, are the recordings available to the
They
council?
are. They're on the website. Links are already in.
Great.
Great job by Brandy and the team putting those up very quickly.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Craig?
Thanks, Doug. Now, just want to thank everybody for a great series of meetings. Really good contributions all around. Great discussion. It was kind of nice to see everybody adapt to a new format in these challenging times. But as Doug said, we'd appreciate any feedback. Hopefully people feel that it went well. Also wanted to extend a big thanks to Doug and Alice, Brandy, and Bridget, who really carried all this. Just a fantastic job putting it together. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Craig. Alice and Brandy were the brainchildren behind it all, so they deserve all the credit. Okay, well, anybody have any last comments or questions? But I think we're done, and you survived 8 sessions of seeing us, so congratulations. Okay, thanks
everybody.
We'll see you soon.
Bye for now.
on another Zoom channel.
Thank you. Good job, everyone.
Thank you.